When Wendy first told me about this week's episode of Making Conversations Count, I got really excited. I thought to myself, of course, that's something I'm a subject expert on. I'm going to know exactly how to produce this episode, especially as I've been getting better and better at it by the month for the past 2 years. And then I realised, oh no, it's not that being bold that we're talking about here. We're talking about the brave version, aren't we? Of course. Being bold and confident. You know those types who can walk up to a stranger and pay them a compliment, not think anything of it. Ask someone on a date. Request that raise in their job that they've been working so hard on. It's not easy for some of us to do that kind of stuff. That is until you listen to Fred, who's this week's guest on Making Conversations Count. He spoke to Wendy about boldness exercises. If you've not yet listened, here's a clip.
One of the exercises is to go up to somebody and ask if you can sit at their table in a restaurant or a coffee shop. And people think, well, nobody's going to let me do that. About 80% of the time, people will say, sure, go ahead.
So we thought we'd get together and have a bit of a chat on our takeaways from this episode of Making Conversations Count.
I thought I was bad at name dropping, and then Fred goes, oh yeah, I was just playing chess with Richard, Richard Branson. And I'm like, oh yeah, I had him round to dinner. It's just mind-blowing, the people that know people. And Fred's so unassuming. I could have carried on talking to him for a lot longer. That was the thing. And I've talked about introvert and extrovert before, and how I don't really play into that. I play into that there's energy, and you need to use energy sometimes, and then you need to restore your energy sometimes. And I think that makes more sense to me. But I could totally understand what he was saying about teaching himself this method of how to make himself push through something that was uncomfortable for him. And in this case, it was to get over the shyness, because he could see so many other people doing it. It was kind of like he was questioning why it didn't come naturally and how he had to practice until he got to that sort of memory muscle of comfortable. And I see it all the time when I'm training in telemarketing, that people, feel uncomfortable picking up the phone and reaching out to people. It's how do you reframe that so that it feels less uncomfortable? So I could totally buy into the whole pride method and why he's created a workshop for it.
I love the percentage points thing, because what that does is it puts a real number on what is the benefit going to be for me of, if I do this thing I really don't want to do, but I know it's a good thing to do, what does that look like in terms of from 0 to insert number here? And that for me was brilliant, because if you think, okay, if I go and sit down next to somebody that I don't know and decide I want to ask them if I can join them for dinner, and that's 80 percentage points away from achieving that dream, you then think, well, actually, 80, that's achievable. That's not 100. So I quite like that. I think that's a really nice little way of doing it.
And once you've done it, that 20% of extra cheek is just saying, well, shall we have sweet? Shall we have dessert? Isn't it? Because once you've gone that far, it's really not as far to do the rest. And that's kind of the point that it was making. It comes back to think there's, and I forget who came up with these questions, but it's like, what would happen if you did do it? What would happen if you didn't do it? What wouldn't happen if you did do it? And what wouldn't happen if you didn't? Those are the kind of questions that you ask yourself and go, well, what do I want? And we too easily put what others expect of us first, that we don't lean into that exactly what we want. Forget what everybody else is thinking and saying, because it's probably not true anyway.
Well, there we go. Another action-packed episode of Making Conversations Count with Fred, talking us through how to be bold. Hope you've enjoyed us carrying on the conversation, and as always, you can get the latest episodes of the full podcast in your favourite app each week by making sure that you click follow or subscribe on whatever podcast player you're listening to. On Thursday, we're going to be joined by Dave Plunkett and talking collabs.